The massive chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their floating seats, each one shaped for their species' unique needs. The emergency session had been called with unusual urgency, and the reason became clear when Ambassador Talon stepped forward. The Villani diplomat looked tired. His tall, thin frame shook slightly as he approached the center of the chamber. His people were known across the galaxy for their calm nature and healing abilities. To see one of them in such distress sent worried whispers through the assembled crowd. "Council members," Talon began, his voice carrying across the chamber through the universal translators. "My people face total destruction. The Korthak Empire has entered our system with a fleet of 200 warships. They demand our complete surrender or they will destroy every world we call home." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew about the Korthak Empire. They were raiders and conquerors who swept through space like a plague. World after world had fallen to their massive ships and cruel armies. They showed no mercy to those who resisted, and treated surrender as weakness to be punished. Representative Golar from the Helix Confederation stood up. His 4 arms gestured wildly as he spoke. "The Korthak have never been stopped. Our combined fleets tried to help the Nexus colonies. Last year, we lost 30 ships and barely escaped. That is exactly why we must act differently," Talon replied. "If we do nothing, the Villani will join the long list of extinct species. Our medical knowledge, our peaceful ways, everything will be lost forever." An older representative from the core world spoke up. "What can we do that has not been tried before? The Korthak ships are too strong. Their weapons cut through our shields like they are made of paper. Even if we gathered every ship from every world here, we would still be outnumbered and outgunned." The debate continued for hours. Some wanted to send a small force to help evacuate the Villani population. Others argued that even that would be suicide. The Korthak had made it clear that anyone who helped their targets would become targets themselves. As the arguments grew louder, Talon raised his hand for silence. When the chamber quieted, he spoke again, this time more quietly. "There is one option we have not discussed," he said. "The humans." The reaction was immediate. Some representatives gasped. Others began talking all at once. A few laughed, though not with humor. "The humans?" Golar asked. "You mean the primitives? From that death world? The ones who have barely left their own system?" Talon nodded. "The same ones. Earth is listed in our databases as uninhabitable. The gravity is too strong. The atmosphere is poison to most of us. The weather systems are violent beyond anything we know. Yet somehow intelligent life evolved there. Life that survived and thrived in conditions that would kill most of us in minutes." Representative Vex from the Outer Rim colonies leaned forward. "I have heard stories about them. My traders sometimes encounter their ships at the edge of known space. They say humans are different, dangerous in ways we do not understand." "Dangerous how?" asked the core world's representative. Vex paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "Their ships are built like weapons, even the ones meant for trade. Their crews train for combat constantly, and they have this saying, 'Peace through superior firepower.' It means they keep peace by being more dangerous than anyone who might threaten it." The chamber erupted in discussion again. Some called the idea foolish. Others pointed out that desperate times required desperate measures. A few wondered if the humans would even respond to a call for help from aliens they had never met. Talon waited for quiet again. "I have studied their history," he said. "Humans have a pattern. When faced with bullies who prey on the weak, they do not back down. They fight. And they do not stop fighting until the bully can never hurt anyone again." "But what if they refuse?" asked another representative. "What if they decide this is not their problem? Then we are no worse off than we are now," Talon replied. "My people will die either way, but if there is even a small chance that the humans will help, we must try." The vote was close, but it passed. The council would send a message to Earth asking for help against the Korthak Empire. Many representatives left the chamber shaking their heads, convinced they were wasting precious time on a hopeless plan. Across the galaxy, in the outer reaches of a small spiral arm, Captain Reed sat in his command chair aboard the human vessel, Prometheus. The ship was on patrol duty, checking the boundaries of human space for any signs of trouble. It was routine work, but Reed never let his crew get lazy. In his experience, trouble had a way of finding you when you least expected it. "Captain," called Lieutenant Johnson from the communication station. "I'm picking up a signal on the emergency channel. It's not from any human ship." Reed frowned. The emergency channel was reserved for the most serious situations. "Put it through." The message that filled the bridge was unlike anything they had ever received. An alien voice, speaking broken but understandable English, told a story of genocide and desperation. An entire civilization faced extinction at the hands of a brutal empire. They had nowhere else to turn. "How far away is this Volani system?" Reed asked. "About 6 days at maximum jump, sir," replied the navigation officer. Reed stood up and walked to the main display, which now showed a star map with the Volani system highlighted in red. Around it, dozens of other systems were marked with skull, symbols indicating worlds the Korthak had already destroyed. "Sir?" Johnson asked. "What are your orders?" Reed looked at the display for a long moment. He thought about his orders from Earth Command, which were to patrol the border and avoid contact with hostile alien forces. He thought about the Prometheus, which was just one ship against an empire. He thought about the crew members under his command, who had families waiting for them back home. Then he thought about an entire peaceful civilization about to be wiped out by bullies who thought they could do whatever they wanted because no one was strong enough to stop them. "Set course for the Volani system," Reed ordered. "Maximum speed." "Sir," the tactical officer said carefully. "Shouldn't we contact Earth Command first? Get permission or reinforcements?" Reed turned to face his crew. Every one of them was looking at him, waiting for his decision. These were good people, trained soldiers who had sworn to protect innocent life wherever they found it. "We'll send a message to command on the way," Reed said. "But we're not waiting for orders. That message said those people have days before they're all dead. If we wait for the bureaucrats to make up their minds, we'll arrive just in time to count the bodies." The bridge crew exchanged glances. They all knew this could be a suicide mission. One human ship against an entire alien empire was not good odds by any measure. But they also knew their captain was right. Someone had called for help, and humans answered calls for help. It was what they did. "Course laid in, Captain," reported the navigation officer. "Jump when ready," Reed commanded. The Prometheus disappeared into hyperspace, racing toward a distant star system where an ancient evil was about to learn what happened when humans decided someone needed to be stopped. The Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Volani system, its sensors immediately scanning for threats. Captain Reed stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display fill with red dots. Each dot represented a Korthak warship, and there were far more than the original reports had indicated. "Count them," Reed ordered quietly. Lieutenant Johnson worked at his station, his face growing pale as the numbers climbed. "Sir, I'm reading over 300 ships. The largest ones are bigger than anything in our databases." Reed nodded grimly. The Korthak had brought their entire battle fleet to crush the Volani. This was not just an invasion. It was a statement to the galaxy that resistance was pointless. "Launch the stealth probes," Reed commanded. "I want to know everything about those ships. Their weapons, their shields, their weak points. Everything." 3 small, nearly invisible drones launched from the Prometheus and began their dangerous journey toward the Korthak fleet. Each probe was equipped with the most advanced scanning equipment humans had ever built. They moved slowly, using gravitational fields to mask their approach. While the probes worked, Reed contacted Earth Command. The response was swift and direct. Admiral Brooks herself appeared on the communication screen, her stern face showing both concern and determination. "Captain Reed," she said, "I've read your initial report. 300 enemy ships is beyond anything we prepared for. What's the situation on the ground?" Reed pulled up the sensor readings. "It's bad, Admiral. The Korthak have surrounded 4 Volani worlds. They're not attacking yet, but they've made their demands clear. Complete surrender or total destruction." "And the Volani response?" They're trying to evacuate their populations, but they don't have enough ships. Maybe 10% of their people can escape before the deadline expires. Admiral Brooks was quiet for a moment. Reed could see her calculating the odds, weighing the risks against the potential gains. Finally, she spoke. "We're sending reinforcements, Captain. Every available ship is being mobilized. But it will take time." "How much time?" 48 hours, minimum, maybe 72. Reed looked at the tactical display again. The Korthak deadline was in 36 hours. Even if Earth sent every ship they had, it would not be enough to save the Volani people. "Understood, Admiral. We'll do what we can until you arrive." The first stealth probe reached the Korthak formation and began its detailed scan. The data that flowed back to the Prometheus was both fascinating and terrifying. The Korthak ships were built for one purpose: overwhelming destruction. Their hulls were thick and heavily armored. Their weapons could punch through any known shield system. Most importantly, they carried massive troop compartments filled with soldiers. Commander Stone, the ship's intelligence officer, studied the readings with growing alarm. "Captain, these aren't just warships. They're invasion platforms. Each of those big ones carries enough troops to conquer an entire planet." "How many troops are we talking about?" Stone ran the calculations. "Based on the ship sizes and what we can see of their internal structure, maybe 2 million soldiers, all heavily armed and equipped for planetary assault." Reed whistled softly. The entire human military had less than 5 million active soldiers across all branches. The Korthak had brought nearly half that number just to crush one peaceful system. The second probe moved closer to one of the massive Korthak dreadnoughts. What it found there made Reed's blood run cold. The ship's hull was decorated with symbols and trophies from conquered worlds. Entire sections of alien architecture had been welded to the outside, like scalps taken from defeated enemies. "Sir," Johnson called from his station, "I'm picking up transmissions from the Korthak fleet. The universal translator is having trouble with their language, but I think I can make out the basic meaning." "Put it on speakers." The bridge filled with harsh guttural sounds that seemed more like animal growls than intelligent speech. Slowly the translator began to make sense of the words. "Victory through strength, strength through conquest. The weak exist to serve the strong. Those who resist are destroyed. Those who submit become slaves. This is the way of the Korthak." Ilao. Message repeated over and over, broadcast on all frequencies. It was meant to demoralize anyone listening, to make resistance seem pointless before the fighting even began. But Reed noticed something interesting about the transmission. The Korthak were not just threatening the Volani. They were trying to convince themselves. The repetitive nature of the message, the constant reinforcement of their superiority, suggested they needed to believe their own propaganda. The third probe completed its scan of the Korthak command structure. The enemy fleet was organized in a rigid hierarchy, with the largest ships at the center surrounded by layers of smaller vessels. There was no flexibility in their formation, no room for creative tactics. They relied on brute force and intimidation. "Commander," Stone brought his analysis to Reed's attention. "Captain, I think I understand how the Korthak operate. They've never faced serious resistance. Every species they've conquered either surrendered immediately or was crushed so quickly they never learned to adapt. What does that mean for us?" "It means they have no experience with an enemy that fights back effectively. Their tactics are designed to overwhelm weak opponents, not to handle a real military threat." Reed studied the tactical display again, looking at the Korthak formation with new eyes. Their ships were powerful, but they were arranged in a pattern that assumed no enemy would dare attack them directly. The smaller ships on the outside were spread too thin to provide mutual support. The big ships in the center were too far back to respond quickly to threats. "It's like they're daring someone to attack them," Reed murmured. "Sir?" Johnson asked. "Look at their formation. They're not trying to protect themselves. They're trying to look as threatening as possible. It's psychological. Warfare, not military strategy." The more Reed studied the enemy, the more he realized that the Korthak Empire was built on a lie. They were not unbeatable warriors. They were bullies who had never met anyone willing to fight back. A new message came in from the Villani government. Ambassador Talon appeared on the screen, his face drawn with exhaustion and fear. "Captain Reed," he said, "the Korthak have given us their final ultimatum. We have 18 hours to surrender completely, or they will begin destroying our worlds, one by one. Our people are panicking. Many want to surrender just to survive a little longer." "Hold on, Ambassador," Reed replied. "Help is coming. But you are only one ship. How can you stand against their entire fleet?" Reed looked at his crew, seeing the determination in their faces. These were humans raised on a world that tried to kill them every day. They had learned to survive by being smarter, tougher, and more stubborn than anything that threatened them. "We'll find a way," Reed said simply. "Humans always do." After the communication ended, Reed called his senior officers together. They gathered in the small conference room next to the bridge, their faces serious as they reviewed the intelligence gathered by the probes. "Gentlemen," Reed began, "we're outnumbered, 300 to 1. The enemy has superior firepower and armor. By any reasonable measure, this is a hopeless situation." He paused, letting that sink in. "Fortunately, humans have never been particularly reasonable. We're going to hit them, and we're going to hit them hard. But we need to be smart about it." The planning session lasted for hours, with each officer contributing ideas and expertise. By the time they finished, they had a plan that was equal parts brilliant and insane. It relied on speed, surprise, and the element of human unpredictability. As the meeting broke up, Reed remained behind, staring at the tactical display. In a few hours, his ship would go up against an entire enemy fleet. The odds were terrible, but Reed found himself smiling. The Korthak were about to learn what happened when bullies picked on someone who could fight back. The Korthak ultimatum expired at dawn on the first Villani world. Admiral Kresh stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the peaceful planet below. The Villani had not surrendered, but they had not resisted either. They simply waited, hoping for a miracle that would never come. "Begin the bombardment," Kresh ordered. "Destroy their capital city first. Let them see what happens to those who defy the Korthak Empire." The massive guns of the dreadnought began to charge, their energy signatures building to devastating levels. Across the fleet, other ships prepared to join the attack. In minutes, millions of innocent lives would be snuffed out as an example to the galaxy. That was when the Prometheus appeared. The human ship dropped out of hyperspace directly between the Korthak fleet and the planet below. It was tiny compared to the alien warships, no bigger than one of their escort vessels. But something about its sudden appearance made the Korthak pause. "Unknown vessel," Admiral Kresh broadcast. "You are interfering with Korthak military operations. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Captain Reed's response was broadcast on all frequencies, so every ship in the system could hear it clearly. "This is Captain Reed of the human vessel Prometheus. The Villani people are under our protection. Any attack on them will be considered an act of war against humanity. You have 60 seconds to withdraw your forces." The Korthak bridge crew looked at each other in confusion. A single alien ship was threatening their entire fleet. It was either the bravest thing they had ever seen, or the most foolish. Admiral Kresh laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his ship. "Humans. I have heard of your species. You think you are warriors because you survived on a harsh world. Let me show you what real warriors can do." He turned to his weapons officer. "Destroy that ship. Use it as target practice. 12, Korthak." Destroyers moved forward, their guns charging. The human ship made no attempt to flee. Instead, it did something that made no sense at all. It accelerated directly toward the Korthak formation, as if it planned to ram them. "Foolish aliens," Kresh muttered. "They choose suicide over surrender." But the Prometheus was not planning to ram anyone. As it reached the edge of the Korthak formation, it suddenly changed course and flew directly under the belly of the nearest destroyer. The Korthak ship tried to track it with its guns, but the human vessel was too close and moving too fast. Reed's voice came over the communications again. "You should have taken our offer. The Prometheus fired its weapons point-blank into the destroyer's engine section. The Korthak shields designed to stop attacks from a distance were useless at such close range. The human ship's guns tore through the hull like paper, and the destroyer exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Before the Korthak could react, the Prometheus was already moving to its next target. It darted between the larger ships, using them as cover while it attacked their smaller escorts. The human ship fought like nothing the Korthak had ever seen before. It was fast, unpredictable, and utterly fearless. "All ships, open fire!" Admiral Kresh shouted. "Destroy that ship!" The Korthak fleet turned its guns on the single human vessel, filling space with energy beams and projectiles. But the Prometheus seemed to dance between the attacks, never staying in one place long enough to be hit. It moved like a fighter pilot in a dogfight, not like a starship captain in a fleet battle. Captain Reed stood on his bridge, calmly giving orders as his ship twisted and turned through the enemy formation. "Johnson, target their command antennas. Stone, prepare the boarding pods. We're going to take one of their big ships." "Sir," Stone replied. "Boarding pods? We only have 30 Marines on board." 30 human Marines, Reed corrected. "Against aliens who have never faced real soldiers. That should be enough." The Prometheus lined up with a Korthak cruiser and fired 3 boarding pods from its launch tubes. The small craft were designed to pierce enemy hulls and deliver troops directly into hostile ships. The Korthak had no defense against such a tactic because no civilized species had ever been crazy enough to attempt it. The pods struck the cruiser and burned through its armor. 30 human Marines, led by Sergeant Miller, poured into the alien ship. They wore powered armor that made them look like metal demons, and they carried weapons that could punch through bulkheads. The Korthak crew had never fought inside their own ship before. Their weapons were designed for planetary combat, not the tight confines of starship corridors. The humans, on the other hand, had trained for exactly this kind of fighting. "Move fast, hit hard," Miller ordered his troops. "Find their bridge and take control of their ship." The Marines spread through the Korthak vessel like a virus, fighting their way past confused and panicked alien soldiers. The Korthak were strong and fierce, but they had never faced enemies who fought with such intensity and skill. Within 20 minutes, the human Marines had captured the cruiser's bridge. Miller stood over the defeated Korthak captain, his armor smoking from enemy fire. "Prometheus, this is Miller. We have control of the ship. What are your orders?" Reed's voice came through the communications clearly. "Turn their guns on their own fleet. Let's see how they like being on the receiving end." The captured Korthak cruiser slowly turned its weapons toward the rest of the fleet. The other Korthak ships hesitated, unsure whether to fire on their own vessel. That moment of confusion was all Reed needed. The Prometheus appeared from behind a Korthak dreadnought, its guns blazing. It had somehow managed to get behind the enemy flagship without being detected. Reed's ship poured fire into the massive vessel's engine section, crippling it and leaving it drifting helplessly. Admiral Kresh watched in horror as his perfect formation fell apart. The human ship was everywhere at once, striking and vanishing before his gunners could respond. His own cruiser was firing on his fleet. His flagship was disabled and burning. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "It is only one ship." His tactical officer, a scarred veteran of dozens of campaigns, looked up from his instruments with fear in his eyes. "Admiral, these humans fight like demons. They do not follow any known patterns of warfare. They attack when they should retreat. They board ships instead of destroying them. They use our own weapons against us. Then we destroy them with everything we have," Kresh roared. "All ships, concentrate fire on that human vessel. I want it blown to pieces." But Reed had anticipated this response. As the Korthak fleet focused its attention on the Prometheus, 3 more human ships dropped out of hyperspace. They were destroyers from the Earth Patrol Fleet, smaller and faster than the Prometheus, but just as dangerous. Captain Nash of the destroyer Revenge led the new arrivals in a coordinated attack on the Korthak rearguard. His ship and its companions moved in perfect formation, their guns picking off enemy vessels with surgical precision. The Korthak found themselves caught between 2 forces. The Prometheus continued its deadly dance through their formation while the new human ships attacked from the opposite direction. Every move the aliens made was anticipated and countered by the human commanders. "Sir," the Korthak tactical officer reported, "we have lost 47 ships. The humans have lost none." Admiral Kresh stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His mighty fleet, the terror of the galaxy, was being torn apart by 4 human ships. It was impossible, but it was happening right before his eyes. "Withdraw," he ordered quietly. "Sir? Withdraw," Kresh shouted. "All ships retreat to hyperspace. We will regroup and call for reinforcements." But the humans were not done with them yet. As the Korthak ships tried to escape, the captured cruiser opened fire on them from behind. The human marines had turned the alien vessel into a weapon against its own fleet. The Korthak retreat became a rout, as ship after ship was destroyed trying to reach hyperspace. Those that escaped carried news that would shake the foundations of the Korthak Empire. The humans had arrived and they fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The news of the defeat at the Villani system spread through the Korthak Empire like wildfire. For the first time in their history, a Korthak fleet had been forced to retreat, not by a superior force but by 4 alien ships that fought with tactics no civilized species had ever used. Emperor Vrak sat on his throne in the capital city of the Korthak homeworld, listening to Admiral Kresh's report. The Great Hall was filled with military commanders, all of them trying to understand what had happened. "You lost 60 ships to 4 human vessels?" Emperor Vrak's voice was dangerously quiet. "Explain to me how this is possible." Admiral Kresh knelt before the throne, his armor still scorched from battle. "My lord, these humans do not fight like any enemy we have faced. They use their ships as weapons, ramming our vessels or exploding them inside our formations. They board our ships instead of destroying them from a distance. They turn our own guns against us." "Coward," spat General Thok from his position beside the throne. "You were defeated by primitive aliens and now you make excuses." "Then you face them," Kresh replied angrily. "Take your armies and show us how it should be done." Emperor Vrak raised his hand for silence. "Enough. We will not be defeated by a handful of ships from an unknown world. Mobilize the Second Fleet. Bring 10,000 vessels to crush these humans and their Villani pets." But the humans were no longer defending just the Villani system. While the Korthak argued among themselves, human ships had followed the retreating aliens back to their territory. What had started as a rescue mission was becoming something much larger. Captain Reed stood in the war room aboard the Earth fleet carrier New York, which had arrived with massive reinforcements. Admiral Brooks had brought everything Earth could spare: battleships, carriers, destroyers, and support vessels. The human fleet now numbered over 200 ships. "The Korthak have military bases in 17 systems," Admiral Brooks explained, pointing to the star map. "Each base supports their expansion into new territory. If we destroy these bases, we can cut their supply lines and stop their ability to make war." General Hayes, commander of the Marine Corps Expeditionary Force, studied the tactical data. "These bases are heavily defended. Some of them have ground-based weapons that could destroy our ships in orbit." "Then we do not fight them in orbit," Admiral Brooks replied. "We go to the surface and destroy them the hard way." The first target was a Korthak shipyard in the Korvek system. The facility was massive, capable of building 50 warships at once. It was protected by orbital defense platforms and a garrison of 100,000 Korthak soldiers. Major Cross led the assault team that would capture the shipyard. His Special Forces unit had trained for this kind of mission, but never against an enemy that outnumbered them so badly. "Remember," Cross told his soldiers as they prepared to board their dropships, "we are not here to fight fair. We are here to win. Use every advantage we have." The attack began with Captain Wells and his destroyer squadron eliminating the orbital defenses. The human ships moved too fast for the Korthak gunners to track, striking each platform with precision strikes before moving to the next target. With the orbital defenses down, Major Cross led his Marines to the surface. The Korthak had built their base in a mountain valley, thinking the terrain would protect them from attack. They had not considered that humans were experts at mountain warfare. The Marines landed on the peaks surrounding the valley and began their descent. They moved, in small teams, using the rocky terrain to hide their approach. Each team carried enough firepower to destroy a city block, concentrated into weapons that could be carried by individual soldiers. The Korthak guards never saw them coming. The first indication of attack was when explosions began tearing through their defensive positions. The humans struck from multiple directions at once using tactics that made no sense to the alien defenders. "They are everywhere," a Korthak commander reported to his headquarters. "How can so few soldiers be in so many places at once?" The answer was simple. Human soldiers were trained to fight as individuals, not just as part of large formations. Each Marine could operate independently, making decisions and adapting to changing situations without waiting for orders. While the Marines captured the ground installations, demolition teams began placing charges throughout the shipyard. Within 6 hours, the entire facility was under human control. Major Cross stood in the command center, watching as his teams systematically destroyed every piece of equipment that could be used to build Korthak warships. "Target destroyed," he reported to Admiral Brooks. "Moving to next objective." The pattern was repeated across Korthak space. Human forces struck at military bases, supply depots, and communication centers. Each attack was planned and executed with ruthless efficiency. The humans did not just defeat their enemies, they eliminated their ability to continue fighting. Emperor Vrak watched his empire crumble on the strategic displays in his throne room. Red lights marked bases that had been destroyed or captured. Communication lines showed gaps where human forces had severed connections between Korthak worlds. "How many ships do these humans have?" he demanded. "Our intelligence suggests no more than 500 vessels," replied his chief advisor. "But they fight as if they have thousands. They strike multiple targets simultaneously, then vanish before our forces can respond. Then we will make them come to us," Emperor Vrak decided. "Recall all fleets to the homeworld. Let them try to attack our strongest fortification." But the humans had no intention of attacking the Korthak homeworld directly. Instead, they continued their systematic destruction of the Empire's infrastructure. Admiral Brooks had studied the reports of Korthak expansion and identified their weakness. They depended on a complex network of supply lines to maintain their military machine. "Cut the arteries and the body dies," she explained to her staff. "We do not need to destroy every Korthak ship. We just need to make it impossible for them to fuel, supply, or repair those ships." Captain Nash led a squadron of destroyers in an attack on the main Korthak fuel depot in the Zarian system. The facility processed fuel for half the Korthak fleet, converting raw materials into the exotic matter their ships used for power. The attack was swift and devastating. Nash's ships appeared from hyperspace already firing, their weapons targeting the most volatile parts of the refinery. The explosions that followed could be seen from orbit, and the facility burned for days afterward. Similar attacks struck mining operations, weapons factories, and training centers. Each successful mission weakened the Korthak Empire's ability to continue the war. More importantly, it sent a message to every Korthak commander: nowhere was safe from human attack. The psychological impact was even greater than the military damage. Korthak soldiers, who had never known defeat, began to fear their human enemies. Stories spread through their ranks of Marines who fought like demons, of ships that appeared from nowhere to strike and vanish, of an enemy that never gave up and never showed mercy. Entire Korthak fleets began surrendering rather than face human forces in battle. Planets that had been loyal to the Empire for generations declared their independence. The Korthak Empire, built on fear and intimidation, was collapsing as its enemies realized they were not invincible. In his throne room, Emperor Vrak stared at the displays showing the remains of his once mighty empire. Half his territory was in open rebellion. His fleets were scattered or destroyed. His military commanders were either dead or hiding. "Bring me the human leader," he ordered his remaining advisors. "I will negotiate terms." But the humans were not interested in negotiation. They had seen what the Korthak Empire did to peaceful worlds. They had witnessed the genocide, the slavery, the casual cruelty that defined Korthak civilization. There would be no negotiation. There would be only justice. 3 months after the first battle at the Villani system, Emperor Vrak knelt in the ruins of his throne room. The great palace that had stood for 1,000 years was now a shattered monument to fallen pride. Human marines stood guard at every entrance, their weapons ready, but not needed. The Korthak ruler had no fight left in him. Admiral Brooks walked through the debris, her boots crunching on broken stone and twisted metal. She stopped in front of the former emperor, looking down at the being who had once commanded the most feared military force in the galaxy. "Your empire is finished," she said simply. "Your fleets are destroyed or surrendered. Your worlds are in rebellion. Your people are demanding new leadership." Vrak raised his head slowly. His once proud armor was dented and scarred. The crown that had marked his absolute authority lay broken at his feet. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "Justice," Brooks replied. "For every world you destroyed, for every innocent life you took, for every species you drove to extinction." Around the galaxy, the collapse of the Korthak Empire sent shockwaves through every civilization. Species that had lived in terror for generations suddenly found themselves free. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions to deal with the aftermath, but they struggled to understand what had happened. Ambassador Talon stood before the council once again, but this time his message was very different. The Vallani diplomat looked healthier, his people saved from certain destruction. Behind him, holographic displays showed the current state of former Korthak territory. "The humans have done something unprecedented," Talon reported. "They have not conquered the Korthak Empire. They have dismantled it completely. Every military installation has been destroyed or captured. Every warship has been eliminated. The infrastructure that supported their war machine no longer exists." Representative Goler from the Helix Confederation leaned forward in his floating seat. "What about the Korthak population? Surely the humans are not committing genocide in return?" "No," Talon replied. "The humans have been careful to distinguish between the Korthak military and their civilian population. Soldiers who surrendered have been taken prisoner. Civilians have been left alone unless they actively supported military operations." "But what about their leadership?" asked the representative from the core worlds. "The war criminals are being held for trial. The humans insist that those responsible for genocide must face justice. They have compiled evidence from hundreds of destroyed worlds." The council chamber buzzed with nervous conversation. Never before had an entire galactic empire been brought down so completely by such a small force. The implications were staggering. On the Korthak homeworld, Captain Reed walked through the capital city with a squad of Marines. The streets were quiet, filled with alien civilians who watched the humans with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Most had never seen their conquerors up close before. The Korthak people were not inherently evil, Reed had learned. They were a warrior culture that had been shaped by centuries of military rule. Their leaders had convinced them that conquest was necessary for survival, that the strong had a right to dominate the weak. "Sir," Sergeant Miller reported, "the civilian government representatives are ready to meet with you." Reed nodded. The humans had insisted that the Korthak people choose new leaders from among their own civilians, not their military. It was a difficult process, but necessary for lasting peace. The meeting took place in what had once been the Emperor's private council chamber. A dozen Korthak civilians sat around a circular table, their faces showing uncertainty and hope in equal measure. These were teachers, doctors, engineers, and administrators who had never held political power. "We do not know how to govern," one of them admitted. "For 1,000 years the military has made all decisions. We have no experience with democracy or civilian rule." "You will learn," Reed assured them. "Other species have made the transition from military dictatorship to peaceful government. The galaxy will help you if you commit to changing your ways." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Admiral Brooks. Reed stepped outside to take the call, leaving the Korthak civilians to discuss their future among themselves. "Captain," Brooks said, "we have a problem. 3 Korthak battle groups that were operating in deep space have refused to surrender. They are heading toward the Nexus colonies, threatening to continue the war." Reed frowned. The Nexus colonies were exactly the kind of peaceful settlements the Korthak had always targeted. If the rogue fleets reached them, millions of innocent people would die. How long do we have? 48 hours, maybe less. These are the hardline commanders who refuse to accept defeat. They would rather burn the galaxy than admit they were wrong. Reed looked back at the council chamber, where the Korthak civilians were trying to build a better future for their people. Then he thought about the innocent colonists who were about to become victims of the war criminals' last desperate act. "Send me the fleet positions," he ordered. "We finish this now." The final battle of the war took place in the empty space between star systems. The three rogue Korthak fleets had linked up, creating a combined force of nearly 400 ships. It was the largest enemy formation the humans had faced since the war began. Captain Nash led the human interceptor force, racing to reach the colonies before the Korthak could attack them. His ships pushed their engines beyond safe limits, determined to arrive in time. "Captain," his tactical officer reported, "the enemy fleet is moving faster than expected. They will reach the colonies 6 hours before we do." Nash studied the tactical display, calculating distances and speeds. There was only one way to stop the Korthak in time, but it would require a sacrifice that no reasonable commander would ask of his crews. "All ships," he broadcast to his squadron, "prepare for emergency hyperspace insertion. We are going to drop out of hyperspace directly inside their formation." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Dropping out of hyperspace inside an enemy fleet was incredibly dangerous. The gravitational fields of so many ships could tear apart anything that materialized among them. "Sir," his navigation officer said carefully, "the odds of survival are less than 30%. "Then we better make those 30% count," Nash replied. 20 human ships materialized in the center of the Korthak formation, their weapons already firing. The surprise was complete. The enemy had no time to react as human guns tore into their ships at point-blank range. The battle was fierce, but brief. The humans fought with the desperation of those who knew they were probably going to die, but were determined to save the innocent colonists. Ship after ship was destroyed on both sides until space was filled with debris and burning wreckage. When the fighting ended, only 7 human ships remained functional, but the Korthak fleet was completely destroyed. The last military force of the Empire had been eliminated, along with their threat to peaceful worlds. In the aftermath, the galaxy slowly began to rebuild. The Korthak homeworld established a civilian government with help from the Galactic Council. Former Korthak territories were freed to govern themselves or join other confederations. War crimes trials were held for those responsible for genocide. Ambassador Talon made one final report to the Galactic Council, summarizing the end of the Korthak threat. "The humans have returned to their own space," he concluded. "They asked for no territory, no tribute, no special recognition. They came when we called for help. They ended a threat that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, and then they went home." "What kind of species does such a thing?" asked Representative Vex. Talon considered the question carefully before answering. "The kind that understands that sometimes the greatest mercy requires absolute strength. The kind that will cross the galaxy to protect strangers, then disappear without asking for reward. The kind that proves that the most dangerous worlds sometimes produce the most noble hearts." The Galactic Council voted unanimously to establish a memorial for all those who had died under Korthak rule. At its center, a simple inscription read, "When evil seemed unstoppable, someone answered the call for help." In the outer reaches of the galaxy, human ships resumed their quiet patrols, watching for new threats and hoping they would never again be needed. But if another call for help came from desperate people facing extinction, the humans would answer. They always did. The great council chamber floated in the endless dark of space, its crystal walls reflecting the light of distant stars. Inside, hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in their seats, watching as Ambassador Vel walked slowly to the center platform. Vel's blue scales caught the soft light as he moved. His hands shook slightly, and his large eyes were filled with something the council had rarely seen before: pure terror. The Althari had always been peaceful people. They built beautiful cities of crystal and light. They studied the stars and created art that made other species weep with joy. They had never known war. Now their world was burning. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Vel began, his voice breaking slightly. I come before you not as an ambassador, but as a survivor. My people are dying. Our cities are ash. Our children are gone. The chamber fell silent. Even the translators seemed to whisper more quietly. Vel touched a control on his wrist, and above him appeared images that made several council members look away. Burning cities, broken crystal spires that had once reached toward the sky like frozen music, bodies in the streets, smoke rising from what had been homes, schools, places of worship. The Dracoth Empire came without warning, Vel continued. We tried to talk. We offered them anything they wanted. Resources, technology, even territory. They laughed at us. The images changed. Now they showed the Dracoth themselves, tall, powerful, beings with dark scales and cold yellow eyes. Their ships were black metal monsters covered in spikes and weapons. Everything about them spoke of violence and death. They do not want our resources, Vel said. They want our suffering. They take pleasure in destroying beauty. They capture our people and force them to fight each other for entertainment. They burn our libraries because they hate knowledge. They destroy our art because they cannot create anything themselves. Ambassador Trix of the Centaurian Union shifted in her seat. Her people were ancient and wise, but they had given up war 10,000 years ago. Surely there must be some way to negotiate, she said softly. All beings can be reasoned with. Vel's laugh was bitter. I thought that too. I watched Warlord Krex personally execute 50 of our diplomats who came to talk peace. He made their families watch. The chamber grew even quieter. These were civilized beings who had never seen such cruelty. Our military lasted 3 days. Vel continued. We had ships, but they were built for exploration and science. Our weapons were designed to clear asteroids and study distant suns. The Dracoth ships were built for one thing only, to kill. He showed them tactical displays of the battles. The Althari ships were beautiful, sleek things that moved like dancers through space. The Dracoth ships were ugly and brutal, but they were fast and deadly. The battles were not even close. They have 300 warships in our system now, Vel said. More coming every day. They are not just conquering us, they are erasing us. In 6 months there will be no Althari left in the universe. Ambassador Quinn of the Rigel Collective cleared his throat. We feel your pain, Ambassador Vel. Perhaps we can offer sanctuary to your refugees. The Collective has many empty worlds, where your people could start again. Start again? Vel's voice rose. With what? The Dracoth do not leave survivors. They hunt down every ship that tries to escape. They board refugee vessels and kill everyone inside, even the children. There is no starting again for my people. Other council members began to speak up. The Vegan Republic offered medical supplies. The Sirius Federation promised to provide temporary housing on their station worlds. The Andromedan Alliance said they would send engineers to help rebuild when the crisis was over, but no one offered to fight. Vel listened to their kind words and generous offers with growing despair. These were good people, civilized people. But they had lived in peace for so long that they had forgotten what to do when peace was not enough. Please, he whispered, and his voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Please. My wife is still on our homeworld. My children, millions of innocent beings who never hurt anyone, they are dying while we talk. The silence that followed was heavy with shame. Everyone wanted to help, but no one knew how. War was something they had read about in history books, not something they did. Then from the back of the chamber a voice spoke up. We will help. Every head turned. In the rear section, reserved for the newest council members, a human stood up. He was not particularly tall or impressive looking. His skin was the pale color of someone who spent most of his time in artificial light. His dark hair was cut short and neat. But there was something in his eyes that made even the Dracoth recordings seem less frightening. Captain Reed of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, he said, his voice calm and steady. We will help your people, Ambassador Vel. The chamber erupted in surprised whispers. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago. They were still considered primitives by many species. Their homeworld was classified as a Class 12 death world, barely suitable for life. Most council members assumed they would remain quiet observers for decades while they learned civilized behavior. Ambassador Trix stood up. Captain Reed, with respect, this is a matter for experienced civilizations. The Dracoth Empire has conquered 17 star systems. They have destroyed entire species. This is not something for a young race to attempt. Reed looked at her with those steady eyes. Ambassador Trix, how many species have you saved from extinction? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Trix had no answer. How many of you have ever faced an enemy who kills for pleasure? Reed asked the chamber. How many of you have fought against someone who cannot be reasoned with, cannot be bought, cannot be convinced to show mercy? More silence. Reed walked down toward the center platform where Vel still stood. Ambassador Vel, how long do your people have? The Dracoth are preparing a final assault on our capital city, Vel replied. Perhaps 2 weeks, maybe less. Then we do not have time for long discussions, Reed said. He turned to face the council. The Terran Colonial Navy will deploy to the Althari system within 72 hours. We will engage the Dracoth forces and eliminate the threat to civilian populations. Eliminate? Ambassador Quinn sounded shocked. Surely you mean negotiate for their withdrawal. Reed's expression did not change. The time for negotiation ended when they started killing children for sport. No, Ambassador. I mean eliminate. The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence felt different, dangerous. Vel looked up at the human with something that might have been hope for the first time in months. You would do this for strangers? Risk your lives for people you have never met? Reed nodded simply. Where we come from, Ambassador, that is what civilized people do. As the council session ended and the various ambassadors filed out, many of them cast worried glances at the human captain. They had asked for help, but they were beginning to realize they might have gotten more than they bargained for. None of them truly understood what it meant to ask Deathworlders for help. They would learn soon enough. Admiral Torres stood in the war room deep inside Luna Base, watching the holographic display that showed the Althari system. Red dots marked Dracoth ships scattered across the star system like a disease. 300 enemy vessels surrounded the dying world, their positions updated in real time by long-range sensors. What do we know about their capabilities? Torres asked. Colonel Hayes stepped forward, his weathered face showing the scars of 2 decades in the colonial marines. Standard galactic technology, Admiral. Plasma cannons, kinetic railguns, basic shield arrays. Their ships are big and heavily armed, but they are built for intimidation, not tactical flexibility. Major Kim, the fleet intelligence officer, pulled up detailed scans of the Dracoth vessels. They fight like most galactic powers. Lots of firepower in direct confrontations. No stealth systems, limited electronic warfare capabilities. Their tactics are simple. Overwhelm the enemy with superior numbers and raw force. Torres nodded. Slowly. She had fought in the Jupiter mining wars and the Titan rebellion. She understood how civilized warfare worked in the galaxy. Formal battles with rules and honor. The Dracoth were different only in their cruelty, not their methods. What about their ground forces? She asked. Captain Mills leaned over the tactical display. Heavy infantry with energy weapons. They use fear as much as firepower. They broadcast their attacks to terrorize populations. Everything we have seen suggests they have never fought an enemy that fights back effectively. The hologram shifted to show Dracoth soldiers in action. They were tall and powerful, their dark armor covered with spikes and skull decorations. They moved through burning cities like predators, taking their time, enjoying the hunt. They are used to prey, Torres observed. Not predators. Hayes smiled grimly. Admiral, these lizards have no idea what they are about to face. Torres turned to address the room full of officers. The Galactic Council has made one thing very clear. They want us to resolve this situation with minimal violence. They specifically requested that we avoid what they called excessive force. Several officers exchanged glances. Commander Stone of the stealth frigate Ghost shook his head. Ma'am, with respect, these Dracoth have been butchering civilians for months. Sometimes the only language a bully understands is getting punched in the face. The council wants us to negotiate first, Torres continued. They believe all conflicts can be resolved through diplomacy. Lieutenant Commander Park spoke up from the back of the room. Admiral, the Dracoth executed 50 diplomats who came to talk peace. They made their families watch. What exactly are we supposed to negotiate about? Torres looked at the young officer. The council believes there must be something the Dracoth want that we can give them instead of war. The room fell silent. Finally, Hayes spoke up. What they want is to cause pain, Admiral. You cannot negotiate with that. Torres nodded. I agree, Colonel, but we have our orders. She paused, then continued with a slight smile. Our orders are to resolve the situation and protect the Althari people. How we accomplish that mission is left to our discretion. The officers in the room began to smile as well. 3rd Expeditionary Fleet will deploy in 6 hours, Torres announced. 12 ships. The cruiser Retribution will serve as flagship under Captain Nova. The destroyers Nemesis, Ghost, and Fury will provide escort and reconnaissance. Support vessels will handle logistics and medical assistance. Captain Nova raised her hand. Admiral, 12 ships against 300 seems like poor odds. Torres looked at her with the expression of someone who had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and insurgents on Mars. Captain, we are not going to fight 300 ships. We are going to hunt them. The difference in those words was not lost on anyone in the room. Meanwhile, in the Althari system, Warlord Krex stood on the bridge of his flagship Bloodfang, watching the final preparations for the assault on the Althari capital. Through the massive view screen, he could see the planet below, once blue and green, now scarred with burning continents and choking smoke. Status report, he growled to his tactical officer. Commander Vex consulted his displays. All assault groups are in position, Warlord. The planetary defenses have been eliminated. The remaining population centers are defenseless. Krex smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Good. Begin the final bombardment in 12 hours. I want the capital city to burn slowly. Let them watch their precious crystal spires melt. His communications. Officer looked up from his console. Warlord, we are receiving a transmission from the edge of the system. A small fleet has just dropped out of hyperspace. Krex turned toward the tactical display. 12 small dots had appeared at the system's edge, tiny compared to his massive fleet. Analysis, he ordered. Vex worked at his console for a moment. Unknown configuration ships, Warlord. The energy signatures are strange. I cannot identify the species. How many vessels? 12, sir. All relatively small. No match for our fleet. Krex laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. 12 ships? Some fool species thinks they can challenge the Dracoth Empire with 12 ships? The communication came through on the main channel. A human face appeared on the screen. Pale skin, dark hair, cold eyes that seemed to look right through Krex. I am Captain Nova of the Terran vessel Retribution, the human said. You are ordered to withdraw your forces from this system immediately and surrender for crimes against civilian populations. Krex stared at the screen for a moment, then began to laugh again. His bridge crew joined in. The idea was so ridiculous that even his tactical officers were chuckling. Terran, Krex said when he could speak again. I have never heard of your species, little mammal. Where is your homeworld? I will add it to my list of conquests after I finish here. Earth, Nova replied simply. 3rd planet in the Sol system. Feel free to look it up in your databases. Vex quickly accessed the galactic records. After a moment, his expression changed. Warlord, their homeworld is classified as a Class 12 death world. Extreme gravity, violent weather, multiple extinction events, dominated by predator species. Krex's laughter died. Death worlds were rare and dangerous. Only the most savage species could evolve on such planets, but 12 ships were still only 12 ships. Little Deathworlder, Krex said, his voice turning cold. You are brave but stupid. Withdraw now and I will grant you quick deaths. Stay, and watch your ships burn with this pathetic world. Nova's expression did not change. Warlord Krex, you have committed genocide against 17 species. You have tortured and murdered billions of innocent beings. You have refused all offers of surrender. Under Terran Colonial Naval Code, you are designated as a hostile force threatening civilian populations. And what does that mean, mammal? Nova's voice remained calm and professional. It means we are authorized to use any level of force necessary to neutralize the threat you represent to innocent life. Krex cut the communication and turned to his tactical officer. Deploy the fleet. Destroy those 12 ships quickly, then we finish burning the planet. Yes, Warlord. Shall we offer them another chance to surrender? Krex's eyes glowed with anticipation. No. I want to see how Deathworlders die. As his fleet began to move toward the human ships, Krex felt the familiar excitement of an easy victory. These humans had made a mistake coming here. He would enjoy teaching them the price of challenging the Drakith Empire. Behind him, his officers prepared their weapons and adjusted their shields. 300 ships against 12 seemed like unfair odds. They were right about that, but not in the way they thought. The Drakith fleet moved toward the human ships like a swarm of angry insects. 300 black vessels spread across space in a wall of metal and weapons. Their formation was designed to inspire terror. Massive dreadnoughts in the center. Smaller cruisers and destroyers spreading out to surround any enemy. On the bridge of the Bloodfang, Warlord Krex watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The 12 human ships had not moved from their position at the edge of the system. They hung in space like frightened animals waiting for death. Target the largest vessel first, Krex ordered. I want the others to watch it burn before we destroy them. Commander Vex worked at his console. Warlord, I am having difficulty getting a clear lock on their ships. Their energy signatures keep shifting. Krex frowned. What do you mean, shifting? It is like they are there one moment and gone the next. Our sensors cannot maintain a steady reading. On the human flagship Retribution, Captain Nova stood calmly on her bridge, watching the approaching enemy fleet. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. There was no panic, no shouting, no dramatic speeches. Just professionals doing their job. Stealth systems online, reported Lieutenant Chen from the sensor station. All fleet vessels are running silent. Weapons are charged and ready, added Commander Blake from Tactical. We have firing solutions on all enemy vessels. Nova nodded. Open a channel to the enemy flagship. Krex's face appeared on the main screen, his yellow eyes glowing with anticipated victory. Have you reconsidered, little mammal? It is not too late to run home to your death world, Warlord Krex, Nova said in the same calm voice she might use to order coffee. This is your final warning. Surrender now, and you will be taken prisoner. Continue your attack, and you will be destroyed. Krex's laughter echoed across the channel. Destroyed? By 12 tiny ships? You Deathworlders are even more stupid than I thought. We are not stupid, Nova replied. We are just very good at killing things. The communication ended. Krex turned to his weapons officer. All ships open fire. Reduce those human vessels to atoms. 300 Drakith ships opened fire at once. The space between the fleets lit up with plasma bolts and energy beams. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But when the light faded, the human ships were gone. What? Krex stared at the empty space where the enemy fleet had been. Where did they go? I do not know, Warlord, Vex said, his voice filled with confusion. They just disappeared. The first Drakith ship died without warning. The cruiser Darkblade simply exploded in a ball of fire and metal. There had been no incoming missile, no energy beam, nothing on the sensors to indicate an attack. Report, Krex shouted. Unknown, Warlord. The Darkblade just exploded. 2 more ships died in the next minute, then 5 more. The Drakith fleet began to panic, firing wildly at empty space, their sensors unable to detect any enemy. On the Retribution, Nova watched the battle unfold with professional interest. Ghost, nice work on that flanking maneuver. Nemesis, you have 3 targets. At bearing 270, the human ships moved through the Drakith fleet like phantoms. Their stealth systems made them invisible to enemy sensors. Their electronic warfare packages disrupted Dracoth communications and targeting systems. And their weapons were designed, not for show but for killing. Where Dracoth weapons were large and impressive, human weapons were small and deadly. Instead of massive energy cannons that announced their presence, humans used railguns that fired metal slugs at incredible speed. Instead of slow-moving plasma bolts, they used laser systems that struck at the speed of light. But the real difference was not in their weapons. It was in how they used them. The Dracoth fought like warriors, charging forward, seeking glorious combat, trying to intimidate their enemies. The humans fought like hunters, patient, precise, efficient. They did not want glory. They wanted their enemies dead. Captain Stone aboard the Ghost slipped his destroyer between two Dracoth battleships. His weapons officer fired a spread of missiles into the engine sections of both vessels. The explosions crippled both ships, leaving them helpless and drifting. "Finish them," Stone ordered quietly. The Ghost's railguns fired twice. Both battleships exploded. Commander Mills on the Nemesis used a different approach. Her ship's electronic warfare systems took control of a Dracoth cruiser's navigation computer. The enemy vessel suddenly turned and fired on its own allies, destroying 2 ships before the Dracoth realized what was happening. "Target eliminated," Mills reported over the comm. "Moving to next objective." The battle lasted 2 hours. When it ended, the space around the Althari homeworld was filled with the wreckage of Dracoth ships. Pieces of metal and plastic drifted in the darkness like a mechanical graveyard. Of the 300 ships that had attacked, only 12 survived. They drifted helplessly in space, their engines destroyed, their weapons offline, their crews trapped aboard dying vessels. Krex found himself alone on the bridge of the Bloodfang. Most of his crew was dead. The rest had fled to the escape pods. His great flagship was a broken wreck, held together by emergency power and prayer. The communication channel activated. Captain Nova's face appeared on his screen again. But this time Krex could not meet her eyes. "Warlord Krex," she said in the same calm voice, "your fleet has been neutralized. Your invasion force is destroyed. Do you wish to surrender?" Krex tried to speak, but no words came out. He had conquered 17 star systems. He had destroyed entire civilizations. He had never been defeated, never even seriously challenged. Now, his mighty fleet was space debris and he was at the mercy of 12 small ships. "How?" he whispered. Nova tilted her head slightly. "How what?" "How did you destroy my fleet so easily? We outnumbered you 25-1. Numbers do not matter if you cannot hit your target," Nova replied. "Your ships were built to intimidate civilian populations. Our ships were built to kill enemy vessels. There is a difference." Krex slumped in his command chair. "What happens? Now you surrender. Your surviving crews will be taken prisoner. You will be tried for war crimes. The Althari people will be free. And if I refuse," Nova's expression did not change, "then you will join the rest of your fleet." Krex looked around his ruined bridge. Through the cracked view screen, he could see the wreckage of his once mighty armada. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy were now nothing but floating metal and memories. "I surrender," he said quietly. "Wise choice," Nova replied. "Prepare to be boarded." As the communication ended, Krex sat alone in the darkness of his dying ship. He had learned something that day, something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. There was always a bigger predator. News of the Althari liberation spread through the galaxy like wildfire. The official report spoke of a successful diplomatic intervention and minimal casualties. The Galactic Council praised the peaceful resolution of the crisis. Ambassador Vel gave speeches about the return of hope to his people, but the full truth remained classified in the deepest levels of Terran naval intelligence. Admiral Torres stood in her private office aboard Luna Base, reviewing the intelligence reports that had been recovered from the destroyed Dracoth fleet. What they revealed made her jaw clench with cold anger. "Colonel Hayes," she called over the intercom, "report to my office immediately." Hayes arrived within minutes, along with Major Kim and Captain Stone. Torres activated the holographic display, and the room filled with images that made even these hardened military officers look away. "This is what we found in the Dracoth databases," Torres said quietly. 67 conquered worlds, 43 completely destroyed civilizations, and estimated 12 billion beings killed over the past century. The images showed world after world reduced to ash and bone. Cities that had stood for thousands of years turned to rubble. Entire species wiped from existence because they had been too peaceful to fight back effectively. "They kept records," Major Kim said, her voice tight with disgust. "They documented everything, the torture, the executions, the experiments." Stone leaned forward, studying a tactical map that showed Dracoth strongholds scattered across 3 sectors of space. "How many of them are left?" "Intelligence estimates approximately 50,000 military personnel spread across 12 fortress worlds," Torres replied, "plus unknown numbers of support staff, administrators, and slave overseers." Hayes pointed to a cluster of red dots on the map. "What about their leadership, the ones who gave the orders?" "Most of the high command is based on their homeworld of Craxus Prime, but we have identified 23 regional warlords operating from fortified positions throughout their territory." Torres changed the display to show a series of prison facilities. "These are the slave processing centers. Our estimates suggest there are over 2 million beings currently held in Dracoth labor camps." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what those numbers meant. Millions of innocents trapped in hell waiting for rescue that might never come. "Admiral," Stone said finally, "what are our orders?" Torres looked at each of them in turn. "The Galactic Council believes the threat has been neutralized. They think the destruction of the invasion fleet was sufficient. They want us to return to normal diplomatic relations." "And what do we think?" Hayes asked. "We think that as long as a single Dracoth warlord draws breath, innocent people will continue to die." Torres activated another display showing ship deployments. "The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet will begin Phase 2 operations immediately. Our mission is simple: complete elimination of the Dracoth military capacity and liberation of all prisoner populations." Major Kim pulled up intelligence files on her tablet. "Ma'am, we are talking about conducting operations across 3 sectors of space. This is not a single battle anymore, this is a war." "Yes," Torres agreed, "but it is a war that should have been fought a long time ago. The galaxy had the power to stop the Dracoth decades ago. They chose not to because it was easier to ignore the problem." Captain Stone studied the tactical displays. "How do we proceed without alerting the Council to our activities?" Torres smiled grimly. "We use the same methods that worked in the Althari system. We hunt them quietly, efficiently, and completely. No survivors to report back, no evidence left behind. The Dracoth Empire will simply disappear." 3 days later, the first strike team deployed from Luna Base aboard the stealth destroyer Phantom. Their target was a Dracoth supply depot in the Rigel sector, a fortified asteroid base that served as a staging area for raids against civilian shipping. Commander Walsh led a team of 12 Marine specialists through the asteroid's ventilation systems. They moved like shadows through the corridors, their powered armor making no sound on the metal floors. The Dracoth guards never knew what hit them. One moment they were laughing about their latest raid, the next they were dead. Walsh's team moved through the facility with mechanical precision, neutralizing every hostile they encountered. In the depot's central command center, they found something that made Walsh's blood run cold. Video files showing Dracoth soldiers executing prisoners for sport. Children separated from their parents. Beings tortured simply because their captors were bored. "Clean sweep," Walsh ordered over the comm. "Every computer, every file, every piece of equipment. I want this place erased." 20 minutes later, the asteroid exploded in a brief flash of light. To any observers, it would look like an industrial accident. Mining operations were always dangerous. Meanwhile, Captain Mills took the Nemesis to the Outer Rim, where intelligence had located a Dracoth patrol base. Instead of attacking directly, she used the ship's electronic warfare systems to take control of the base's automated defenses. The Dracoth garrison woke up to find their own weapons firing on their barracks. By the time they realized they were under attack, half their number was already dead. The survivors tried to send a distress call, but found their communication systems had been disabled. Mills watched the base tear itself apart through the Nemesis's sensors. "Target eliminated," she reported. "No distress signal sent. Moving to secondary objective." The pattern repeated across Dracoth space. Patrol fleets vanished without a trace. Supply convoys simply disappeared. Fortress bases went silent, their automated systems sending normal status reports even as their crews lay dead in the corridors. The psychological effect was devastating. Dracoth commanders who had ruled through fear now lived in constant terror themselves. They increased security, doubled guard shifts, and installed redundant communication systems. Nothing helped. The humans were not fighting a conventional war. They were conducting an extermination campaign with surgical precision. On the fortress world of Car 7, Regional Warlord Grix paced nervously in his command bunker. In the past month, he had lost contact with half his outlying bases. The few patrol ships that returned brought stories of empty space where Dracoth facilities should have been. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving a priority transmission from Warlord Krex." Grix hurried to the communication console. Krex's image appeared on the screen, but he looked like a broken being. His proud bearing was gone, replaced by the hollow stare of someone who had seen his entire world collapse. "Brother," Krex said quietly, "are you receiving attacks from the humans?" "Humans?" Grix frowned. "What humans? I thought you were fighting some minor species in the outer systems." "The humans destroyed my entire fleet," Krex replied. 300 ships, gone in 2 hours. They fight like nothing we have ever encountered." Grix felt ice form in his stomach. "That is impossible. No species could destroy 300 warships with only 12 vessels." "I saw it happen. I was there." Krex's eyes focused on something beyond the camera. "They are coming for all of us, Grix. Every warlord, every base, every ship. They will not stop until we are all dead." The transmission ended abruptly. Grix stared at the blank screen, trying to process what he had heard. If Krex was telling the truth, then the Dracoth Empire faced an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. He turned to his tactical officer. "Double all security patrols. Install additional sensor arrays. I want to know about every ship that enters this system." But even as he gave the orders, Grix knew they would not be enough. Deep in his warriors' heart, he felt something he had never experienced before. He was afraid. 6 months after the liberation of the Althari homeworld, Regional Warlord Grix found himself hiding in a reinforced bunker, deep beneath the surface of Takar 7. The fortress world that had once been the pride of the Dracoth military was now a graveyard of twisted metal and burning ruins. Above him, the sounds of battle had finally stopped. The silence was somehow worse than the explosions. Grix stared at the tactical display that showed the status of Dracoth forces across the galaxy. Red dots marked destroyed bases. Yellow indicated facilities that had gone silent. Green showed active installations still under Dracoth control. There were only 3 green dots left. His communications officer looked up from his console with terrified eyes. "Sir, we have lost contact with Fortress Krell. The last transmission was a distress signal, then nothing." Another green dot disappeared from the display. "What about our escape ships?" Grix asked desperately. "All destroyed while attempting to leave the system, sir. The humans have some kind of interdiction field that prevents hyperspace jumps. Nothing gets in or out." Grix slumped in his command chair. 3 months ago, he had commanded 50,000 troops across 12 star systems. Now he was trapped in a bunker with less than 100 survivors, waiting for death to find him. The blast doors that were rated to withstand planet-cracking weapons began to slide open with a soft hiss. Grix drew his sidearm and pointed it at the entrance, knowing it was useless. If the humans had gotten this far, no weapon he possessed would make a difference. Admiral Torres walked through the doorway alone. She was not wearing armor or carrying visible weapons. Her uniform was clean and pressed, as if she had just come from a formal dinner rather than a battlefield. Behind her, The corridor was filled with the bodies of Grix's elite guards. They had died so quietly that he had not even heard the fighting. "Warlord Grix," Torres said politely as if greeting an old friend. "I am Admiral Torres of the Terran Colonial Navy." Grix kept his weapon trained on her, though his hand was shaking. "How did you get past my defenses?" "What defenses?" Torres asked genuinely. "The automated turrets were disabled 3 hours ago. Your guard posts were neutralized 40 minutes ago. Your communications array was destroyed 12 minutes ago. There are no defenses left." She looked around the bunker with professional interest. "This is well constructed. It would have taken considerable effort to build something this secure so deep underground." "You cannot win," Grix said, though his voice lacked conviction. "The Dracoth Empire spans dozens of worlds. Our fleets number in the thousands." Torres consulted a small device in her hand. "Actually, as of 18 minutes ago, your empire consists of this bunker and approximately 47 surviving personnel. Your fleets number 0 active vessels." The words hit Grix like physical blows. Impossible. "We had fortress worlds, hidden bases, emergency fleets." "Had is the correct tense," Torres agreed. "They are all gone now. Your species' capacity for organized military action has been completely eliminated." Grix lowered his weapon slightly. "You destroyed everything? All of it? Every military installation, every warship, every weapons depot. We also liberated all slave facilities and prisoner camps. Current estimates place rescued individuals at approximately 2.7 million beings from 43 different species." The enormity of what she was saying began to sink in. "You hunted us across 3 sectors of space. Yes. You coordinated simultaneous attacks on dozens of targets. Yes. You eliminated an entire interstellar empire in 6 months. Torres nodded. "The Dracoth Empire is now a historical footnote. Future generations will read about it in textbooks, assuming anyone remembers to write about it." Grix stared at her. "Why? We never attacked your homeworld. We never even knew humans existed until 6 months ago. Why did you hunt us to extinction?" Torres pulled up a chair and sat down across from him. "Because you made a mistake, Warlord. You assumed that mercy was weakness. You thought that civilized behavior meant inability to fight. You believed that peaceful species were prey." She activated her datapad, showing him images from the liberated slave camps. Beings who had been tortured, starved, forced to fight each other for Dracoth amusement. "We found your records," Torres continued. "Every atrocity, every execution, every act of cruelty. You documented it all because you were proud of it." Grix looked away from the images. "We are warriors. It is our nature." "No," Torres said firmly. "Warriors fight other warriors. What you did was murder helpless civilians for entertainment. There is a difference." She stood up and walked to the tactical display, looking at the 3 remaining green dots. "These are your only surviving installations: a mining facility on Praxis Minor with 12 personnel, a listening post in the Vega system with 8 technicians, and this bunker." "What will you do with the survivors?" Grix asked. "The ones at the mining facility and listening post have already surrendered. They will be tried for war crimes by a joint tribunal of the species you enslaved. Some will probably be executed. Others will spend their lives in prison." "And me?" Torres turned back to face him. "That depends on you, Warlord. Do you wish to surrender?" Grix looked around his ruined command center. Through the thick walls, he could hear the sound of his remaining guards laying down their weapons as they surrendered to human forces. "If I surrender, what happens? You will be tried for genocide, slavery, torture, and crimes against civilian populations. Given the evidence we have recovered, you will almost certainly be executed." "And if I refuse to surrender?" Torres's expression did not change. "Then you will be eliminated here and now, along with any personnel who resist." Grix studied her face, looking for some sign of emotion, some hint of mercy or anger. He found nothing but cold professionalism. "You would kill unarmed prisoners?" "You are not prisoners yet," Torres replied. "You become prisoners when you surrender." Until then, you are enemy combatants in an active war zone. The logic was flawless and terrifying. I have one question, Grix said finally. Ask it. Your species came from a death world. You evolved as predators, but you fight to protect other species, even ones you barely know. Why? Torres considered the question for a moment. Because that is what civilized people do, Warlord. On our world, the strong protect the weak. It is not mercy, it is responsibility. She moved toward the exit. You have 5 minutes to decide. Surrender and face trial or resist and die here. Either way, the Dracoth Empire ends today. As she reached the doorway, Grix called out, Admiral. She turned back. The galaxy will fear you now. They asked for help, but they will not like what they got. Torres paused at the threshold. Fear is not our goal, Warlord. But if fear keeps other species from following your path, then perhaps it serves a purpose. She disappeared into the corridor, leaving Grix alone with his choice. 5 minutes later, the last Dracoth warlord walked out of his bunker with his hands raised. The empire that had terrorized the galaxy for over a century was finished.